Okay, so hi Alexia, hi Harriet. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited about the discussion we're going to have. As a female, obviously, I love talking about the kind of Make Money Equal campaign. I love talking about female finance, and I'm really excited to find out more about Juno as well. So if you guys would like to introduce yourself, whoever wants to go first.
Let's go in alphabetical order. Alexia, you go first.
Thanks, Harriet. Hello, I am Alexia, and I'm one of the co-founders of Juno. The other co-founder is actually my sister, and she's based in London, and I'm based in Australia. We started Juno late 2020, at the end of the pandemic, when investing became such a hot topic because of the financial crisis that we were living. And we were seeing that there was a real difference in the conversation that our girlfriends were having as opposed to our male friends when it came to investing in the share market. And we saw that there is a massive discrepancy, first of all, in confidence, but also in knowledge. And I studied finance, so for me, it was really shocking to see some of my lawyer and doctor friends completely shying away at the idea of investing in the share market as soon as they heard the word investing. So this is when we started to look into financial education, and we thought that there is just no platform at the moment that allows people to learn about finance in an engaging way. And so it's when we started Juno, and it's been an interesting journey since then. We're launching in September, hopefully, and Harriet has been helping us. She's been one of our advisors. So I'll let Harriet introduce herself.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Harriet. I am an Associate Director at Common Industry. I head up the FinTech and Finance team there, but I'm also a very avid campaigner and vocal financial feminist. I also do a lot of stuff around money and mental health topics like this. So it's been really exciting speaking to the team at Juno, and also, working with a lot of very interesting financial startups over the years, just sort of around all these issues-based things, including the Make Money Equal campaign from Starling, which I know you mentioned earlier. So,
okay, great. Yeah, great to hear that from both of you, and great to kind of get to know a little bit more about what you guys do as well. So I guess getting straight into it, I mean, this is something, like I said, is quite personal to me as a woman who has come into the finance industry quite recently, to be honest, about a year ago. And it's something that I've picked up on a little bit more, and I've started to notice a little bit more now I'm aware of it. But as women working in the finance industry, do you guys have any first-hand experience of gender equality when it comes to money, kind of your own, personal experiences of that?
Harriet, you've been in the industry for so much longer. I'll let you go first.
I mean, it is an interesting question, because I think I'd posit that every woman has experienced gender inequality when it comes to money, whether they're in finance or not in finance, because I think there's the everyday sort of sexism that you find in the way that money is taught to us, that's spoken about, the way that sometimes our negotiation attempts are handled or our sort of salaries are approached. So I think that is an everyday sort of like low level that all of us experience. I think on a personal level, I've been quite lucky because of the topics that I have focused in on, I've always been very conscious of what's happening, and kind of felt quite confident in calling things out. But I think, there's definitely a lot of instances where I've had friends and colleagues come to me kind of going, so I've had this conversation, I'm not very comfortable with it. And actually it has been a matter of kind of financial bias, to put it in a slightly different way. But yeah, I think gender inequality is a very significant issue for the finance sector. But I think a lot of that is sort of blurred lines between, say, soft skill roles in finance versus hard skills. So whether you're a marketeer versus a banker, sort of thing. So actually you sometimes see these blurry lines where people's salaries are approached differently, or attitudes are slightly different, to put it lightly. But yeah.
How about you, Alexia?
It's interesting that you say that, Harriet, because I feel as though my experience has been quite similar. A lot of startup founders that are women will tell you that raising money is incredibly complicated. And there is a lot of gender inequality when it comes to who gets funding for their startup. In the UK at the moment, only 3% of VC funding goes to women-founded startups, which is just a shocking stat. And so I want to acknowledge that this is probably a problem that a lot of people face in this industry, yet it's not something that Margot and I have had to deal with on a personal basis. The funding round has been quite smooth, and I think whether it's due to luck or due to just being at the right time, at the right place, at the right moment, it went pretty smoothly. So it's complicated for me to put a personal twist on the experience as a woman in finance, but I do think that it's something that a lot of women experience.
Yeah, and I think, like you've just said, obviously, is it whether it's down to luck or whether it's down to kind of coming into the market at the right time? It's kind of at this moment, because there is a lot more conversation around gender equality, around the wage gap. It feels like it should be the right time to come into the market, and there should be way more than 3% of funding going to female-founded businesses. Like 3% is, like you said, an absolutely ridiculous number. It's minuscule. So absolutely, I agree with you there. And I think this will be a question. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it's interesting because obviously 3% seems incredibly low, and it is incredibly low. But I was talking to a friend of mine who works in VC funds, and she mentioned that at least for her VC fund, there was only 5% of female applicants. So I think a lot of the conversation needs to be around getting more women into the beginning of the funnel as well, not just at the end of the funnel where they actually receive funding. And I think this is where we see that the problem is more societal as well. The fact that there is not many women even going into the funnel means that a lot of the time women haven't been shown that they can be entrepreneurs and they can be successful at creating companies. But you are absolutely right. The conversation is starting at the moment, and there's a lot of efforts and initiatives being started towards funding female-funded companies. So we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think just to add on that as well, I've definitely heard those stories of female founders who've gone in and then been told they need to bring in a male co-founder, despite the fact they don't currently have one, which is an issue unto itself. But I think there's definitely a lot of movement. I think you've got great initiatives happening with, the diversity VC, backed VC, quite a lot of them have some really cool stuff happening. But I think that pipeline and the funnel is a super important one for us to address. And actually, I suspect we'll come on to it later, but what exactly we can do to change that funnel and to make sure there are more women who want to become entrepreneurs, who want to come into finance, that is such an interesting and essential challenge for all of us.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think obviously looking at money in a general way, we already know how obviously it is so unequal, but like you said, changing that funnel and providing the education and kind of the right kind of like financial literacy for women to be able to access it much easier. And, this is a question for you, Alexia, but, I was reading up on Juno earlier, and that it's a financial empowerment platform for women, and that it was founded out of, like you said earlier, a frustration for the lack of helpful information that existed. So, in your opinion, what is it that we need on a more, I guess, a bigger scale, on a more widespread basis, to make sure that women are offered the same opportunities as men in that case?
The first thing that comes to mind with that question is conversations that we had very early on with potential investors. A lot of them were males, and they always told us that, why is this company made for women? Financial literacy rates are low in men and women. Yes, they are lower in women, but it's a problem that addresses all genders. Shouldn't we create a platform that makes financial literacy interesting for everyone? And of course, the answer to that question is yes. But I do think that traditionally women have been excluded from conversations around finance. The entire financial industry is still being built on outdated gender norms. And when you look at traditional financial education sources, they are often so stereotypically manly, let's put it that way. I think women need to have a space where they truly feel like they're welcomed. They can feel a space that is their own, a space where they feel like the conversation is inclusive and also addressing their own financial struggles, because no, finance is not gender neutral. Women don't go through the same financial difficulties as men do. We have to bear children. Oftentimes we step out of our careers. That means that our pension pots are not getting funded during those years. There's a lot of problems that we need to address specifically for women. And so the aim with Juno and making it exclusive to women and non-binary people is to truly create a space where they can come in and feel as though this was designed for me. This was made with my needs taken into consideration, and I feel comfortable here and I feel welcomed. And then there's a second point, which is that a lot of the financial literacy gap is not actually due to a difference in knowledge. There's a recent study that was published in the Financial Times, which showed that a lot of the financial literacy gap is due to a gap in confidence. And the way they measured this is by removing the I don't know option from a financial literacy test. And then suddenly, when women usually clicked I don't know, you remove the option. And a lot of the time they did know, but they just had to be prompted in the right direction. So there is a lot more that we need to address that is just not based on knowledge. It's about giving women the confidence in their own abilities. Yeah, I think this is what we're trying to achieve by building this platform.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. I've signed up for your subscription emails. I get a few through every now and again, and I'm like, oh yeah, like really excited for it to launch.
Yeah.
And then obviously it fits in, I guess, quite perfectly with the Make Money Equal campaign that Harriet, you were a part of. Would you be able to just give us a bit of a rundown, a bit of an overview of what the Make Money Equal campaign is, what it stands for, and yeah?
Yeah, so I guess the key thing to start with is that back in the day when I worked with Starling Bank, I worked very closely with Anne. It was sort of very early days of Starling. We'd probably hit around 100 people in the company at that point, so we were still quite small. And it was one of those things where we kept having these conversations about anecdotal experiences of sort of everyday patronizing moments with money, and like investing in a capsule wardrobe rather than in stocks and shares, and these kind of things that we kept finding in magazines and whatnot. And we were like, well, we should probably investigate this. So the Make Money Equal campaign was sort of born out of this insight that very much came from our everyday experiences of the way that we're spoken to about money, and explored like actually how women and men are spoken to about money differently, and then sort of how we can create solutions to that. So the initial campaign, which was 2018, that was very much about you know, the way that women are spoken to about money, the way that men are spoken to about money. There's a huge divide. Women are called splurgers, men are called financiers. You know, we're taught tips and tricks, men are taught to invest, this kind of stuff. So it's a very, very stark divide, and actually needs agenda comes out well. Whereas women are very much like told to stay in the box and keep those pennies safe. Men are sort of told that they have to be get rich or they're not very much of a man. To be masculine, they need to succeed in these areas, and actually it becomes this very sort of toxic thing for everyone. So no one can have a healthy relationship with their money whilst that kind of narrative is ongoing. The issue that we were also looking at was the fact that financial education, which we keep coming back to today, is actually very lacking in the UK. So what can be done there? People turn to the media for their education. So the articles that they read are really, really important. And so, yeah, that was kind of the original insight. That in the last few months, they've launched a new version, which is sort of looking at imagery, which is super exciting, because actually imagery is just as important, representation in a different way. So actually seeing yourself being good with money sort of addresses that confidence gap that Alexia was talking about a second ago, and actually having these like people to look up to, whether they are stock imagery or leaders in finance. It just sort of teaches you that actually money is accessible to everyone. So it's about this conversation about money, changing it for the better, making sure that people feel represented, feel like they can feel positive and have a healthy relationship with their finances, and get an education that supports them and their individual needs, not a one size fits all that's being like prescribed by the status quo. So that's the nutshell version.
Yeah, I absolutely love the imagery side of it as well. When obviously the past few months, kind of like about the stock images has been coming out, and there's now the stock image library, which Starling works on, which I think is amazing. And it just goes to show as well, like, it's not even something that I thought of before. It's not something that I kind of addressed the problem, but once it was pointed out to me, I was like, you know what, I've never seen, you know, an image of a woman stockbroker, or a, you know, a female kind of like a CEO of a bank. I've never seen that in imagery before. So I think that was a really important thing to address. And also, I think in terms of representation as well, do you both personally think that that has an effect on the fact that, you know, there's still a kind of disproportionate amount of men working in finance compared to women? I think at the moment it's about 60-40, so it's gotten better, but it's still slightly disproportionate.
Yes, absolutely. I think that, again, it's about who you can see. There's that phrase which is like, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think that is very true even today, whether that's women, whether that's people from other backgrounds, like if you're a minority, if you're gay, if you have a different kind of ability, like actually, if you can see yourself, then you know that someone's achieved it, and therefore you can aspire there, and you know it's actually in your reach. And that, I think, for a long time was very much lacking. And actually, you know, Anne is a case in point. She talks about coming up through the 80s as pretty much one of a kind, and now she's again one of a kind, the only female founder of a bank in the UK, and I think in Europe as well. So actually, you know, it's a really interesting one. But once you see it, it's very important that, you know, you get the message out there and that you are seeing that representation. I think that when we talk about representation in schools, you know, actually a lot of, to your point, you know, I don't think I got given any like things about women in finance until I'd actually left university, by which point it was almost a bit late, because I didn't think that finance was for me. I thought it was the thing that the boys did, and that's just a sort of naivety of the system, I think, that people will find those opportunities on their own. But yeah, so I think representation is incredibly important because it addresses those implicit biases and makes them something that's invisible visible. And that's what's so powerful about the sort of imagery side of the Make Money Equal campaign, and about the linguistic side of it too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then another part of the Make Money Equal campaign, obviously, you were saying it was looking into the media, newspapers, articles, magazines. And I read a stat earlier that was, according to that campaign, 65% of articles define women as excessive spenders. And so when I see an article like that, again, I'm never surprised by it, but I am always frustrated by it. But how much of those kind of articles do you think have been influenced by the media in the past? You know, kind of, there's always the different tropes of like the women love to shop trope, or the man always pays for dinner trope. You know, you see it in things like, you know, Sex and the City, a lot of 90s sitcoms. It's just in your face all of the time. So how much of that do you think has kind of influenced the way that the media speaks to us now?
Yeah, so I think those implicit biases that we talked about before are probably there, and they probably led to those articles in the first place. I think there's always been this understanding that women spend money and men make money, right? That's the split in that piece of research. And the reason that is something that we should challenge in many ways is because actually women look after something like 90% of household finances. So we're in charge of all of the young people in the family, generally speaking, all of the older people in the family, generally speaking. So you end up with a lot of caregiving responsibility, which involves spending. Likewise, in these sort of like traditional roles, women will be in charge of buying everything for the house, buying everything for the sort of the car, making sure that everything is running. So of course, women had a sort of responsibility to spend, and that has then been sort of broken down into tips and tricks to save the pennies, because you are in fact a shopaholic. That's just, I think, one of those ones which doesn't necessarily actually pan out when you really look at what people are spending money on. I think that with the sort of men making money attitude, or men having to, pay for dinner, again, that comes back to those like slightly negative traits, which is like actually men need to show these dominant attitudes towards their finances to prove that they have the money. Otherwise, they are less of a man. And I think that's something that comes from very combative, aggressive language historically. I think that is changing. I think there's a really big movement. There was an amazing study with Calm in the Huffington Post, which was all about sort of men and financial stress, and actually how the impact of money on men's mental health. So that is a really, really great sort of movement in that space as well, trying to help men maybe just approach money in a slightly different way, so that they are not, you know, having to struggle with some of these implicit biases on that side. But I think when it comes to women, a lot of it is actually going back to slightly odd and antiquated roles and responsibilities from a slightly different era. And so yes, the media has maybe pushed those forward in the past, but I think you're also seeing amazing places, Refinery 29, Stylist, Glamour. They have fantastic writers who are really talking about money in a very different way. And some of it's about frugal living, because that's really important for a lot of us, particularly younger women who maybe don't have as much money to spend yet. But also, you know, women who do want to start investing, women who do want to know more about their pension, all of those things. So there is a really, really obvious change that's taking place, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we did a study as well last year, which was kind of about debt and mental health. We ran a campaign called Debt Isn't a Dirty Word. And the proportion of men and women and the difference there of being able to talk about finances, like you said about mental health, it affected men hugely. I mean, it affected women hugely as well, but we saw like disproportionately that men were the ones kind of also holding it in quite a lot and not feeling like they could talk to people about it. So I think there's definitely pressures there for men, but obviously it's still not an equal thing. But I know this is a strange question, because I think we can all do things to help like make money equal and help push this movement forward. But do you think there's anything in particular that men can do to help? You know, ways that men might be able to change, you know, the way they talk to women, the way they talk to their mothers, their sisters, their partners about finances. Because I think that it's very much like feminism. Often it's something that causes a bit of an immediate defense with some men. And I'm not kind of getting at anyone at all, but I think that it's something that, you know, it's not out to make it less equal for men, it's just out to make it more equal for women as well. So yeah, do you guys think that there's any way that, you know, men could kind of change the way they speak their language around finance?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing that I want to say here is that we're not going to be able to change society if we don't include 50% of the population. So, of course, the feminist movement and, of course, financial gender equality includes men in the conversation, and we need them to support us, because otherwise we're not going to get there. I think going back to what Harriet was saying earlier about unconscious biases, the first step that men can do is making those unconscious biases conscious. And that will, the reason why they are talking, not all of them, but some of them, about women and money in a way is because this has been passed on. It's a legacy in our society from outdated gender norms. And so oftentimes they are making comments and they're not quite realizing just how impactful those comments are, or how they can be perceived by women. And a lot of the work that the male population should be doing is about unlearning what they have been told by their parents or by society, and deconstructing the way they perceive women in society and women with money. And I think by doing that work and making those unconscious biases coming to become conscious, I would say that a lot of the harm would be done, would be minimized already, because it's not like men want to consciously put us down, or at least I hope not. A lot of them would say that that's not the case. So once those biases become conscious, at least their language would naturally shift.
Yeah. I think just to add to that, I think it's not so much necessarily about the way that men talk to women about money, although I think one of the most powerful things a man can do is, if a woman is asking, to be transparent about things like their salary, or what they ask for as in a freelance capacity. So if you're doing freelance work, don't just speak to your female friends, speak to your male friends as well and find out what they are giving as their day rate. You will get a much more sort of nuanced perspective then, I find. Likewise with investing, if someone's asking for advice, don't take that as a chance to be patronizing necessarily. I think if it's a guy talking to his friends, he's probably not going to be doing that. But if a woman is asking, I think just be honest, and like if you're feeling uncomfortable about it, just tell them that as well, because I know that it is a taboo still. I think the other one is that actually, and this comes from my brother. So he made a comment the other day at the dinner table, and that we were having a chat about something slightly different, but sort of about sexism and female experiences of sexism. And his thing was like, I think most of the time in that case, my job as a man is to shut up and listen, and just to learn from what women are saying and to believe them, and to kind of take that on board. And I think the other part is to do that, and potentially also to call out your friends if you hear them saying something that is very deeply sexist. But I think it's all part of a process, and I don't think that it means that you should cancel someone necessarily or any of those kind of things. I think it is just a learning process, and if you think you could help someone learn, then sort of have that openness and just kind of remember that, yeah, we're trying to do this rather than it being like that.
Yeah, no, definitely, totally agree. Because I've had personal experiences where I have spoken to my male friends about things, and I've not necessarily felt patronized because I know them and I know that that's not what they're trying to do. But I have had conversations where I might have asked a question that they found, I don't know, like you said, uncomfortable or maybe a little bit intrusive, but I'd be perfectly fine if they turned to me and said, oh, I'm not really comfortable speaking about that. Is that okay? And I'd be like, yeah, of course, like, absolutely. So like you said, yeah, I think it's totally about being transparent and just very straightforward, like they would be with their male friends. So yeah, definitely. But my final question for you both, because I think that you've both inputted so much into this conversation, I've loved speaking to you and I've taken so much from it, is what do you believe personally is the biggest thing that needs to change in order for money to become equal? If you could choose one big change to happen in, say, tomorrow. Bit of a loaded question, sorry.
I would change the hands in whom that money is sitting and bringing it to more women's hands. But I think that's a bit too easy of an answer. I think the biggest change needs to be a societal change. As much as Juno is trying to educate the individual, it is not the individual responsibility. And the fact that women represent 50% of the population, and that not just women, but so many other groups are constantly being left out of those conversations, means that no matter what a single woman can do to educate herself, society needs to change. And I know this is a super vague answer, but there's so many factors coming into this that it's hard to pinpoint one exactly. The owner of money needs to change, let's put it that way.
Yes, no, I fully agree, and I will take a step back and so I don't repeat your answer because I fully agree with it. But I think the thing for me that needs to change the most is probably breaking the taboo around speaking about money. I think that if we talk about money and we talk about money and we talk about money and we change that narrative so that actually you can ask for help, you can admit to debt, you can say, I don't quite understand what the hell's going on in the stock market right now, or any of that kind of stuff without feeling any shame, it will have a huge impact on the way that actually all of us communicate, the way that we interact, and our mental health as well. So I think the way that I often think about it is financial positivity, and in the same way that the body positivity movement is about celebrating all bodies, and being like, actually, with money in this case, it's about championing and celebrating power of your own financial life. So no matter how much or how little you have, you can feel confident in the fact that you can maybe make more, or live the life that you want and achieve your goals. So I think financial positivity is a way to sort of open up this conversation to make sure that people do feel comfortable talking about money, and to sort of remove the fact that money is so emotional, and therefore we feel things like guilt and shame and worry and panic. And actually, if we can sort of unpick that, take a step back, encourage like more conscious like sort of attitudes around our finances, yeah, we can all live healthier financial lives.
Definitely, two very strong answers. Love them both. And yeah, I love that phrase of financial positivity. I think I'm going to be using that a lot more in my daily life as well now. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. Free Steps Virtual Finance Festival. Really excited for people to see this chat, and well, hopefully we'll get some questions in as well that we might be able to follow up with further down the line. Great, thank you.
Thank
very
you
much.
so much, Steph, for having us.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
No problem. Absolutely. I've loved having this conversation, and yeah, I'm just so happy we were able to cover this topic and I was able to be a part of it as well, because I've been reading up on both the Make Money Equal campaign and on Juno as well, and they're two things that I think are just amazing initiatives. I absolutely love them, and I think that they're going to really play a big part in kind of the movement forward to making money equal. So yeah. But yeah, I hope you both have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much.
And thank you for your kind words.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.